Yeah, let's go for it.
Fab.
Let's go for it.
So if I start, hopefully everyone can see.
Yeah, good
Yeah,
H, you can see it.
perfect. I will pass over to you.
All right, guys. Well, thanks very much for joining us today. Super excited to kick off and speak with Nikki around some interesting conversations, which I think we're all going to get a lot of take home from. So, quick introductions again. Scale with Strive, obviously, the owners of the Launch Collective are a world-class go-to-market recruitment organization. So, we typically work with VC-backed tech companies to build go-to-market teams across the US and EMEA. Couple of housekeeping rules for us guys today, if it's okay. I do ask everyone to stay on mute, cameras where possible for all of you not eating your lunch. And I do recommend changing your view to speaker view so we don't have to look at weird angles. And we will leave time at the end for Q&A. So please drop your questions in and I'll do my best to make sure they're all answered before we leave. Okay, and then just wanted to tell you about some upcoming events as well. Or sorry, I'll tell you about who's sponsored today. So today's sponsored by MetaView. They are and the agentic recruitment platform. Sorry, H, you've skewed me.
Sorry, I don't know what is going on. They've changed the sharing thing, and clearly it's flummoxed me. You would think that admin. Ah, there you go.
There we go. So today we're sponsored by MetaView. So thank you very much, MetaView, for sponsoring here. They are the agentic recruitment platform that gives recruiters, hiring managers, and leaders a platform of agents that radically reduce the time and effort to make great hires. So again, thank you very much. And there'll be links in the follow-up for anyone who wants to take a look at these guys. Sponsored with Strive. Yeah, no, we are. I've just gone over that H, so we can probably skip on again. Some upcoming events, guys, as well, to let you know what's happening. We'll have another webinar in about a month's time with Shakid, who's over at a company called Ground Cover, disrupting the observability space against Datadog. So it's going to be all that exciting journey of the startup space and hiring in the USA. We've also got a product demo by Juicebox, followed by a face-to-face event in June in San Francisco. Cool. So we've got today's guest speaker, Nikki, head of talent at Conviction. Nikki, I'll pass over to you. I'll let you do your own introduction. I probably won't do it justice.
Um, well, thank you. Thanks everyone for coming. I am excited to be here, spend some time with you guys for the next hour. A really quick background intro on me. I'm the head of talent and founding operating partner here at Conviction. I joined 2.5 years ago. Before that, I was at Sequoia doing something similar, working on the venture side of their business. And then before that was an operator myself and worked across a couple of different startups, which I'm sure we'll get into at some point. But yeah, that's kind of like high level background on me.
Nice. All right, let's just do a couple of quick fire questions just so the community can get to know you a little bit better.
So,
Um, so what's the best piece of advice you've ever received, Nikki?
oh gosh, the best piece of advice I've ever received, probably would be from one of the founders of Rubric, who I worked really closely with, AJ. He taught me to always optimize for growth, and that if you want to do that, your personal growth is always going to mirror a company's growth. And so choose wisely. And so I would say I've lived by that through a lot of my career and it has served me well.
Amazing. Love it. Love it. Love it. And I guess if you weren't in talent, what kind of job do you think you'd be doing today?
Oh gosh, the world would be my oyster if I wasn't a recruiter. I think I would do a lot of different things, but I think the most interesting thing that I wish I was doing, or I think I would be doing, would be like being a sports psychologist. I used to play tennis competitively at some of the academies that I trained at. We would be given sports psychologists to help us think through like how to be better on the court. And I think mental health has been a big topic in sports, especially recently. So I'd probably do something like that.
Nice. I like it. Quite interlinked as well, I think, to recruitment, the right psychology of
Yeah.
people and personalities in the business. So I can see how that aligns. And I guess last kind of question from me. I know you're not huge on tools, but what's the one tool that you can't live without in your job?
Oh gosh. I would say Claude. I use Claude Cowork all the time. Claude's my friend. Everyone makes fun of me at the firm because I anthropomorphize all AI. But yeah, I talk to Claude every day. Claude helps me be better at my job. So I would say that's the one tool I can't live without right now.
Yeah. Could we imagine a world without AI? Eh? What did we do three
I
years
I mean,
ago?
I would hope for the sake of my job and all the building that we're doing, I'd hope not.
Well, good. Great to get to know you. Let's get things kick-started off. So, do you want to walk us through your journey into talent and how you ended up leading talent at Conviction?
Yeah, oh gosh, my story is long. But I started in talent. I kind of fell into recruiting as most of us do. When I was at Cal, I was actually I was like pre-med, was not smart enough to be a doctor, and went down like the pre-health route, got into a NP program, but kind of had an existential crisis, like many of us, I think, do at some point, and realized or kind of questioned whether I was really doing this for myself or doing it for my parents or someone else. And so a lot of my friends were going into tech after graduation. They had mentioned, like, hey, there's other jobs in tech other than just like engineering. Like, maybe you should look into that. So I landed my first recruiting job as a coordinator at like startup called House at the time in Palo Alto, and deferred my MP school for a year, and absolutely loved working at House. Like, I love the pace, I love the meritocracy. I loved kind of like the startup world and kind of got engrossed in it, and just kind of worked my way, like put my head down, worked hard, worked my way up. Um, Kind of through the ranks. Next, I was at Rubrik during their high growth years, built out the university program with AJ, one of the founders. And then, most notably, I was at Confluent. I worked there with Eve and some other familiar faces here. But started when they were a Series B, around like 200 people, scaled them up to 2,000, got to go through an IPO. Built almost every kind of like part of that business, went through a really interesting rotational program, from building the university program to parts of engineering to parts of go-to-market and G&A. And so that was a really wonderful experience. And I learned a lot just like about building and recruiting at different stages and scales, and also different motions. And then wanted to go early again, so went to a really small fintech startup in New York called Kalshi. Um, Joined them pre-Series A, was one of the founding team members, and um, did a bunch of 0 to 1 building with Tark and Luana. And I think like the theme I would say of like my career is uh, I've built a lot of relationships and nurtured those relationships. And I think that's kind of helped me, especially in these like last few roles. Um, Moving into VC, I was lucky enough to work at 3 Sequoia-backed companies. And so the team had known about me for some time. And so when they were building out the early go-to-market or the early investing team, they needed operators to come help support that growth. And they had reached out. And so decided to take the jump, do something completely different. I had no idea whether I'd be good at it, whether I would like it, but decided to just take the leap and learn and grow from the experience regardless. And ended up really loving it, and was there for almost 2 years. Didn't plan on leaving, but Sarah, my now boss, had left Greylock. She had started Conviction. She was looking for her first operating partner. She wanted someone with like a talent background, but that could just be a Swiss Army knife and do a bunch of different things. And so I was lucky enough that a mutual friend of ours had mentioned my name to her. We ended up getting connected, and I met Sarah, and she's just I don't know if anyone's met her. She's a force of a human being. I don't know how you can meet her and not just be so impressed by her. She's a very unique mind, and I felt like it was a once in a lifetime opportunity to build something on the ground floor with her, but also on this like paradigm shift that we were seeing in tech. And so my framework was like, will I regret this in 5 years if I don't do it? And my answer was yes. So I took the leap and came here as the third employee and started building Conviction with her 2.5 years ago now.
Nice. Really exciting. Great journey. I guess like what did you hope to learn from the VC side as opposed to just directly in the vendors, the startup world?
Yeah, I don't, to be honest, I like VC is such an ambiguous job and every VC is a little bit different. So I didn't really know what to expect coming in. I think the biggest thing I wanted to learn is just like, I wanted to learn more of the like finance side of building and seeing how startups were built and kind of the journey of a startup going from inception to an IPO. But I think I also wanted to just understand and see like the landscape and understand company building from like a 10,000 foot view and um, expand my breadth. And so I think that's kind of my kind of basic what I wanted to get out of it. Just some more understanding of like how companies are built and how you think about doing that.
Nice. I like it. I like it. What would you say the big differences between Sequoia and Conviction are? Because Sequoia is the powerhouse, right? And yeah, I guess what the difference is.
Yeah, I mean, Sequoia is an institution and they are who they are for a reason. I would say the reason why I came to Conviction was like I wanted to build something um with like on this new kind of turn that was happening in AI and be really early and hands-on. I think the part that I miss most on the VC side is just like being an operator myself. Sarah still gives me a hard time about it because sometimes I'll just be like, this founder or this company needs to do X thing. But founders have their own journeys to go through and they have to learn lessons their own way. And it's hard to not be a player anymore and only be a coach sometimes. And so I think I get to be more hands-on because at Conviction, we invest super early. We invest in pre-seed, seed, Series A. So oftentimes we're working with founders who don't even have an idea yet or have like are a few people in a room and just starting to think about building. And so Sarah also is very hands-on. Mike, who's another investor here, is also very hands-on, and we will help them build their entire founding team. We will help them get their first customers. Like we are in it with them building. And so I would say that's kind of the biggest difference. And it feels like I'm just working at a startup again. I feel like the merging of my worlds has happened at Conviction, where it's like I'm wearing a million different hats, doing a lot of different things. And I feel like the startup pace is back kind of in my life, but I'm still getting to do the breadth and like the VC work that I found really interesting.
Amazing. Amazing. I was going to ask what do you think the biggest differences were from being a talent leader versus supporting your entire portfolio? Like how did you manage that change?
Yeah, I think when you're a talent leader in a company, you have a very clear mission, and everyone at the company is on that mission with you. And you all are working day in and day out to make that mission happen. Um, I think the biggest difference in my role today is that um, there's a lot of context switching. Like every company we work with, every business that we build is different, and the challenges are different. The things that they need are different. Founders, like they're unique in the skill set they come in to being a founder and building a company. And so I think having to context switch, having to be more personalized in every interaction that I have, because I can go in a day, I can go from talking to a defense tech founder to a biotech founder to you know, a B2B SaaS company to a consumer gaming company. And so I have to be able to show up for all of those founders in a way that's meaningful and useful to their time and helping them move the needle forward. So I think the context switching and like the vast amount of knowledge that I need to know about how to build all these different companies looks very different now.
Nice. No, really exciting. I think such a variety of work and verticals there that you mentioned. You kind of have to be knowledgeable in all aspects. Let's kind of jump forward a little bit into, early stage recruiting at your portfolio companies. So when you start to work with a brand new portfolio company, what are the
Mhm.
first talent challenges you're typically seeing?
Yeah, I mean, like I said, every company is a little bit different. So it's hard to kind of like blanket statement say something, but I would say a challenge that everyone deals with is employer branding. Just because like in inception, like no one knows about you, right? So helping founders craft their story and then evangelize that story. Is a big piece of that because all of your employer branding before like you come out of stealth especially, but even like once you come out of stealth in the early stages, is all kind of word of mouth organic. Like you're not using specific channels, like you're not creating a bunch of like recruiting marketing content or things like that. And so it really just has to do with how do you tell your story, how do you position yourself, but also like how does every interaction that a candidate has with your company, like, do they walk away feeling like, oh my God, this is an amazing team, this is an amazing problem? Like, even if they don't get to work with your company or don't get the job, do they walk away thinking like, oh, I really wish I had gotten that job. I really wish I could have built this company. And so, kind of teaching founders how to create those moments, create those interactions, but also like helping them with the employer branding and just like teaching them the fundamentals of recruiting, I would say is kind of the typical challenges that I work with and see.
Nice. Obviously, with the stage of what you invest in, obviously a lot of founder-led recruiting, I can imagine. So, if we talk about like role clarity or role architecture and, teaching founders about this, how does that fare in the modern day?
Yeah, I mean it's definitely interesting. I mean, founders are opinionated and strong-willed for many reasons, and it works well in a lot of ways. But I think a lot of the founders we work with come from academia or come from larger labs, like they haven't been hiring managers before. And so a lot of it is just like helping them even orient on how do I go about doing this? Like, how do I think about hiring my first person? And so, I think first it's helping them understand, like, okay, here's how we can leverage like your network, our network, referrals, things like that. Um, and then helping them think through. I think I like to do this more live. I think doing it in a sandbox or a vacuum, I think my experience has been it's harder for founders to grasp. Um, hey, like this is what, this person should look like, or I really care about XYZ experiences. Um, I think especially if they have strongly held opinions, it's hard to influence them out of that in a vacuum. Um,
Mhm.
and so what I like to do is like when we kick off, like I'll have them talk to a bunch of different types of profiles. And sometimes that helps them expand their horizons on like, oh, like these are experiences that like I didn't necessarily think of. Or sometimes it's like, they want the like Googles or like the big labs or whatever is of the world, and they're really set on that. And then they talk to some of those people and then they realize like, oh, well, these folks don't have the risk appetite to come to an early stage startup, or they won't be able to thrive in an environment without any resources. And it's kind of like learning through kind of having conversations and kind of did their own
Yeah.
discovery.
Nice. Nice. I can imagine the challenges you face, founder-led stubbornness versus like, here's how I've built businesses in the past. So my empathy for you. Let's talk about first go-to-market hires. So first AE, sales leaders, marketer. What tends to separate successful hires from unsuccessful hires?
I would say the biggest, at least in AI, I think this looks a little bit different, but in AI, the successful hires versus the unsuccessful hires are ones that are tech savvy. Like, I think more and more so in AI companies, go-to-market folks have to be technical. And they don't necessarily need to be an engineer, but I think they do need to be tech curious. I think they need to understand how different technologies work, and have played around with them, have like, spent some time understanding, if they're working at, a base 10 or, a Sierra or something like that, like spent some time with the product and are tech curious, maybe we could say. And so I would say that is like one thing that we've seen on the AI side, but I think generally early go-to-market hires, I think especially like first AEs or first sales leaders, they need to have the hunter DNA versus the farmer DNA, right?
Yeah.
I think it's easy for founders to want to, at least my experience is like easy for founders to want to hire the flashy, like, salesperson from like a big institution. But I think those folks aren't true hunters. And so when they come into environment or like these early stage environments and they have to go out and source and find new deals and cultivate these relationships, it's harder for them to do so without the structure and the resources. And so I think it's really finding like that personality.
Yeah, 100%. Completely different DNA, right? Than if you're going to go into Databricks and Snowflakes and the rest of it. Not that there's anything wrong with it, but just different DNA.
Yeah.
Any common hiring mistakes at this stage for founders?
I think that a lot of founders tend to be technical. And so hiring technical folks and hiring go-to-market people are very different motions. And the way that you recruit for them and assess them look very different. And I think founders oftentimes want to focus on like the technical skill set or capability for engineers and researchers and all of that stuff. That makes a lot of sense and apply that same model to go-to-market folks. But I think what makes a great go-to-market person has to do a lot with their soft skills, with their ability to like deal with ambiguity and like a lot of these things that you can't really necessarily measure with a technical interview. And so I think that's a common mistake that I see is like they try to transpose their, you know, interview process for like technical folks onto go-to-market folks, and then they end up finding the wrong types of people.
Mm,
And so it's really just for me, it's a lot of catching that before we even get there and coaching them on like, okay, like this is how we're going to look for a go-to-market person. These are the things that we're going to do. Like this is how you're going to spend time with them, and things like that.
nice. I think a lot of almost basics, and then a couple of parts on coaching there, which are really important. And a big element to us as internal talent. Um, let's talk about conviction. So you guys obviously invest heavily in AI companies. So how is hiring at AI companies different to traditional SaaS companies?
Yeah, kind of like I was saying earlier, I think, AI is kind of the way that we build and sell products looks very different than the last decade of, startups, the traditional like, B2B SaaS sales motions aren't really transposing well to AI companies. And so I think the biggest trend that I mentioned earlier that we're seeing is, and I'm sure a lot of you have seen this on the ground as well, is like uh, sales teams are becoming more technical. So we've seen these like newer or like not that they're new, places like Palantir and whatnot had FDEs well
Yeah.
before the AI world kind of like came about. But I think we've seen a lot more of a need for those types of hires because um, I think before customers used to tell companies like, hey, here's how I want to use your product and here's how I'd implement it. And they had more of an understanding of like, how does this fit into our ecosystem and how can we use it? Versus now with AI, we're on such a new frontier. You again have to almost evangelize your product more.
Mm,
So like the reason why FDEs and like the need for technical sales folks has risen astronomically is that um, you have to have a salesperson that can one both show you how to like how you the best use cases for your business, how you would implement this, help you go through those steps, and then kind of carry that on towards success. Um, and so I would say like that's the biggest trend we've seen. I just think sales is kind of like breaking in the traditional way, and we're
yeah.
seeing new DNAs of sales teams being built.
Yeah, yeah, I completely agree. FDE engineer, RevOps side goes to go-to-market engineer, and there's like the solution architects, engineers. So I do think you're right. It's putting up more product-led. I guess a bit of a tangent question here. So the roles which you recruit for, the founders which you work with, are they looking for more efficiencies out of sales now with the folks they bring in, or is there still the same expectation, do you think?
I think in general, I would say teams are getting leaner. So yes, I don't think it's like um, just in sales, but I would say like because of AI and because we are building in a different way, both from like a tooling, but also just um, the way that we're building these companies looks different. I think teams look leaner. And so because teams are leaner, people have to spread their expertise across a couple of different things, right? So, like, if you think about a traditional AE, like, they have to kind of take on some CSM work, some SC work, some, ability to like help customers, like, if they want to close this deal, like, understand the technology and why they should sell or why they should buy it. And so, I would say, like in general, yes, I think we're seeing that across the board, and that includes recruiting.
It's strange, isn't it? Because like at the same time of like sales becoming more efficient and being leaned out, like arguably the talent's got a lot more fierce. I don't know what everybody else thinks here, but how are you working with founders when you're hiring people, like the challenges in particular, against, other experienced early stage vendors? Because there's billions and billions been invested lately, hasn't there? So I do feel like there's a bit of a war going on at the moment.
Yeah, I would say that, yeah, it's hard. I think it's not linear in some ways. And it's hard to like understand. I think things are so ambiguous. So like mapping experiences and all of that is not clear. Um, but um, but yeah, I would say like the overarching thesis is that we are all going to have to become more efficient. Like I think you see more larger rounds and you see bigger funding because it's more expensive to build these companies from a resourcing like compute is really expensive. All the resourcing that is needed to build LLMs and all of that is really expensive, but also like you're seeing this in terms of like driving, like comp has driven up significantly for people. And it's like
Yeah.
because teams are leaner, comp is also going to drive up for these individuals, right? Because they're now spanning and like the lines are blurring, they're doing a lot of different things. And so, um, that's kind of the what I would say like we see and like why we see kind of these trends happening.
Completely agree on the compensation going up. I think, from what we've seen on our end is just all over the US, particularly in the hubs. A lot of these early stage AI founders looking to get back into the office, New York, Boston, and San Francisco as well. I think that's a bit of a theme at the moment. But with that in mind, I guess what are some interesting or unconventional hiring approaches you're seeing founders try right now?
I mean, on the early stages, they do a lot of work trials. So like people will spend like a week, sometimes a few days, instead of a traditional on-site, they'll do a work trial. In terms of like top of funnel or just employer branding things, we've seen a lot of like specialized events to like showcase company culture and all of that, like poker nights or board game nights, or they'll have things like that that are really popular now.
Mm,
Um, so I'd say those are kind of like the more unconventional things. I remember when work trials like first started, I was actually at Sequoia, and one of the companies I was working with was one of the first to try to start doing this. And I was really skeptical. I was like, I don't know if this is going to work, guys. Like, I don't think people can take multiple days off to do this, but it has really become kind of almost the norm. I think most people don't do, at least on the early stages, people don't do on-sites, they do work trials.
yeah, yeah, I completely agree.
Yeah,
And
it
then,
helps. Oh, sorry.
no, go on, fire
I
away.
was just gonna say, like, I think in some ways it's helpful to de-risk for the candidate and for the founder, right? Because also as a candidate, like you, if you're joining early, you're kind of taking a big bet on a small team. And like the biggest thing that you want when you're joining an early company is that you want to love working with the people. Like the idea is going to change, the product's probably going to change to some degree. And so it's really a question of like, do you want to solve something with these specific people? And are you going to be excited to spend more time with them than, your friends or family on a regular basis, right? And so I think it helps the candidate also get that point of view of like, what is it going to look to work with these people, look like to work with these people? And then also get like some insight into like what is the work that they're doing, what are they building, like what are the challenges that I'll get to work on and things like that.
It's really interesting, isn't it? Like, probably maybe they still do, but 5 years ago, they used to do these big BDR days where like 20 BDRs would come in, they'd be split into three parts, and then eventually you'd get from like 30 to eight, and you'd get five offers, etc. It's almost like that kind of thing is coming back, that workshop driven element to it. Um, but with that in mind, looking at these approaches into that founders are using, like any pros and cons of AI in recruitment at the moment that you've seen?
Oh gosh. I feel like I'm not the best person to ask this question to.
You're a
Um,
Claude coder. What do you mean?
I love Claude, but I feel like I have not been super sold on any recruiting AI device. It's kind of a running joke with like me and Mike because he looks at a lot of these companies and he'll always like pull me into the conversation and he's like, I know you're skeptical, but like, will you just hear the pitch and tell me what you think? Um, and usually I'm always like a no. But I think for me, it's just, I think I've been really skeptical because I think of our job as like a people business. And so I don't really, maybe call me old school, like I don't really want to automate any like part of my workflow because every part of my workflow gives me some insight into the candidate, like gives me some intel, like even something as simple as like scheduling, like I haven't used a Calendly or anything like that because even though I probably could streamline my workflow a lot more, um if someone's not like, responsive, if someone's kind of like delaying following up, if or if someone's like super quick to respond and really on top of it, those are all signals for me of like, hey, there's like interest, there's not interest, something's kind of like dragging down the process. Like, let me diagnose this and figure out what's going on. And so yeah, I don't know if I'm the best person to ask this to, but I hear there's some great products out there that people love.
Yeah, I haven't quite come across them myself yet either, so I'm probably on your wavelength. And look, last part from me today, and then I'm really keen to open up a few Q&As. So, guys, if you do have questions, like probably a great time to start popping them in now. But lastly, from me, Nikki, I guess most people in this forum support SaaS go-to-market hiring. If
Mhm.
somebody wanted to get better at an early stage recruiting, like what do you think they should be focusing on and learning and mastering?
I would say that like to be great at anything, you have to be curious. And so I would just say like be curious. And I think like the best go-to-market recruiters that I know have depth. And so have depth in the relationships that you have with your candidates, like have depth in the relationships you have with your hiring managers or the people that you're supporting, like have depth in the business that you're building and like, understanding all of those things will set you apart. And asking questions, being curious. Like when I was in house, I would spend time with like the people that I was hiring for, and I would understand like what is it like to be in this job day to day? Like what makes someone great in this? Or maybe there's like areas where you can suggest of like, hey, like this job requires, XYZ thing. Like maybe we should also look at people with this type of background or like have this type of experience, right? And like that's how you can really like diagnose and um, be great. And so I would say that would be my best piece of advice if like um, just learn the business. I think we're all learning. Like I'm still learning. I learn every day on this job. And I think that's the only thing we can do, especially if you're working at an AI company, like just learn, like be curious. Um, and that's what will help set you apart and make you successful.
Nice. I like the curiosity piece. Number one trait always. Well, look, thanks very much for answering all of my questions. I think a couple from the crowd. So Catherine's asked, like, what type of roles are best for the work trials? So if you've got any examples of this, Nikki, it'd be great to quickly run through it.
I would say the best types of roles for work trials. To be honest, I think I don't know if there's like necessarily a role that couldn't benefit from a work trial. I just think you have to be really thoughtful about how you structure the work trial, right? Like if someone's going to take like an entire day or multiple days, especially like of a work trial, like off from work to like spend with your company, then you want to make sure it's like worth it for them and you're also getting the data points you need. And sometimes you can be strategic, right? Where if it's a multiple day thing, then maybe after day one or day two, you guys are like, clearly this is a hire, like we want this person. Like then you can spend the last day or two selling. And you can be kind of like strategic about that as a team. But I think any role, I mean, we've founders that I've worked with, like we've done work trials for like chief of staff and biz ops roles. We've done work trials for go to market roles. We've done work trials, obviously, for like technical research and engineering roles. So um, I really think it's just about figuring out like, what does this role look like? What do you want this person to do when they come in? And what does that look like? And kind of maybe like, snip a piece of that off and make it into like a day or two kind of like project that they can work on.
Nice. I like it. I do really like the ideas of it, and I think it's something that we'll see to get bigger and bigger. But Jason's got a question for you. So, how was the transition from in-house to VC? What did you not have going in that you wish you had?
Oh gosh, there's a lot I didn't have going in, to be fair. The transition from in-house to VC, it was not an easy one. Like I said, VC is a very ambiguous job. I think what's great about it's like a double-edged sword, right? Like this job is really what you make it. And so you can kind of find your own path and flavor of how you support founders and how you build businesses. Um, but there's no like, you don't come into this job and they're like, oh, hey, here's like your, onboarding deck and here's how you do this job. And, there's some guardrails, but after that, you're kind of like thrown into the deep end of the pool. But I would say like the most surprising thing or the hardest thing for me to adjust to was like initially just like the breadth of the job, like having to, like I said, work with so many founders, like expand my network to know so many people and understand all of these industries. I think that was really hard. I was like drinking from like not even a fire hose. I felt like I was drinking like straight from this fire hydrant and it was just like hitting me in the face. But I would say the other piece of it, like if I really think about my career, um, especially when I was an operator, I think that I really like forced my way through a lot of things. Like if I wanted something done, if you know, we
You were the
needed to make
powerhouse.
yeah, X amount of hires, whatever it was, like I would just like brute force my way through it. Like there was no finesse at all. And so I think coming into this job, I don't have any control. Like I'm here with the founders to some extent, like maybe I have you know, some like minimal control of like, the people that I introduce to them or like, the people that they're talking to and things like that. But um, I'm sitting on the sidelines and I'm watching and I'm coaching. And so I really had to learn like how to influence in a completely different way and drive outcomes without being able to like brute force my way through them. And so I would say that was like my biggest learning curve or the thing that served me the most to learn in this job.
Handle the fact that remote and flexible work is more popular with diverse candidates and RTO policies.
Oh no, sorry, you cut out just a little bit. Could you repeat the question for me?
Yeah, I think my Wi-Fi is going. But Akbar said, "How do you handle the fact that remote and flexible work is more popular with diverse candidates and management focusing on like regressive returns to work policies, return to office?"
Yeah, I think that not all companies are so aggressive about it. You know, but I totally hear you. Like I think there's been this kind of like tension that's like pulling at each other, especially the last year with kind of the aggressive return to office. And then, a lot of traditional software companies of like the last decade still kind of having at least a hybrid model. Um, and so I would say like early, like I work with a lot of early companies and I see there's a lot of benefit to like being in person and like spending that time together. But even then, like there are founders who are open to like the right person, the right candidate, like, traveling in once a month to spend time and things like that. So I think it's really about um it's not that exceptions can't be made. And there are companies that are like more open to it. Um, like I know Decagon, for example, like, are not super strict on like return to office and things like that. Are there companies that like, aren't crazy about like 996, which I know has been a big topic as of recently. And so I would say that there are companies that are more flexible, but I think everything's about just like the relationship. Like if you have that relationship, if you guys find like a mutual fit, you and the company, I think no company wants to turn down someone that's great. And I think if you can get to that point and then negotiate like, hey, this is what can work for me and all of that, then I think I've seen like like I said in cases where exceptions have been made, but it's definitely like not an easy, I think, way to navigate. I think it'll be interesting to see whether or not this continues. I think we'll probably fall like in the middle somewhere, like where it's like hybrid again. But I think we saw this like extreme like pendulum shift to like like I said, 996 or like return to office like 5 days a week. But I think we'll probably land somewhere in the middle is my guess.
Yeah, yeah, I would probably agree. But look, I think that's everything from me, everything from the community. Any last remarks from you? Anything we've not touched on that's worth noting? No? Okay. All good. Well, look, guys, thank you very much for attending. Niki, thank you very much for your time. Love to interview you today, and it's been great. There'll be a follow-up going out, and wish you all the best of the day.
Thanks, Sean. Thank you guys so much. Thank you for all the great work that you're doing at all of your companies. But yeah, if I can ever be helpful, don't hesitate to reach out.
See you guys. Bye now.
Bye.